Thank you very much. I think the organizers of this event have a sense of humor. After a patriotic rosary, they invite an illegal immigrant. No, actually, I'm legal. I'm American by choice, okay? I'll be talking to you about a phenomenon that is today the spearhead of the anti-Catholic revolution in the world. De-Christianization. Every country in the West, to a greater or lesser degree, is being de-Christianized. Elements of the Christian culture, Christian civilization are being gradually removed. We are going back to paganism, or even worse than paganism, back to apostasy. Pope Benedict XVI, in the youth gathering in Germany, he spoke to the bishops, and he said that this is what the West is going through, de-Christianization. But he was not the first one to use this word. Pope Pius XI, in the 30s, wrote two encyclical letters. One, Divini Redemptoris, against the perversity of the communism, and the other one, Firmissima Constancia, in defense of the church in Mexico, that were being persecuted by the Masonic pro-communist government of Plutarco Calles. But the Pope that explained in more detail what is de-Christianization actually was Pius XII, about more than 50 years ago. He addressed the men of the Catholic Action of Italy, and he said that the threat that hovers over mankind is an economy without God, politics without God, and laws without God. Interesting. He didn't talk about the formation of a catechism. No. What does economy without God has to do with salvation? We forget that the economy, the laws, and the politics form our culture around us. And everybody who is born in that culture takes it for granted. So that if God does not intervene in history, the next generation will find homosexual marriage perfectly normal because everybody is doing it. Just a couple of words about economy without God. When you take, for example, American, Canadian, European companies that remove their operations in these countries and apply in communist China, where they can exploit slave labor, all kinds of injustices and the persecution of the church because it makes a buck. This is called an economy without God. And America is full of businesses who do. We keep the status quo of communist China, which is building up, become a threat against us because for the sake of money. Or, for example, in the European Union, when you have the governments paying farmers to produce food and then they pay farmers to destroy them, to keep the price the same level. Can you imagine to destroy food? Well, an economy without God. Politics without God, we can have great examples here in America. To put it simply, among the Republicans, the rhinos and the wishy-washy Republicans don't have enough intestinal fortitude to stand up against the left. And we have, naturally, the Democrats, which are called the vermin in politics. No wonder that the word rat is at the end of Democrat. There are rats there. Okay? And then we have also the very concept of politics. It actually is a Greek word, politics. Poly means many, and ticks are blood-sucking insects that make our lives miserable. But all these, the laws without God, all of them today tend to destroy the family. The family is the mother cell of society. The very first thing God created, the family, be fruitful and multiply. Every single law, everywhere, if you pay attention, It aims at destroying the family. Pope John Paul II, the encyclical letter Evangelium Vitae, he described the 3 stages of the culture of death that destroy the family and lives: contraception, abortion, euthanasia. It's not the purpose here to give you an explanation of the encyclical letter of Pope Paul VI when he condemned contraception. It has been a standard thing in the West for many years. Up to 1925, every single Christian denomination, plus the Roman Catholic Church, it's not a denomination, it's the church. They, all of them, disagreed with artificial contraception. The churches taught the people how to say no to themselves when the occasion arrived. Until the Lambeth Conference of the Church of England decided to make it a matter of conscience. And after that, one church after another, every single Protestant church began to accept contraception as a matter of conscience. And even today, widely inside the Catholic Church, is also accepted. Accepted by silence. We don't talk about it. Now, I'm not going to talk about the doctrine itself. Let's say the concrete results of contraception. You know that for a country, the population of a country to remain the same number of people, neither growing nor diminishing, every couple, every woman should have 2.1 children. It's not 2 kids and a piece of another one. It's not this. It's like this. It's a statistical concept. Take, for example, 10 couples. 9 of them will have 2 children, and the 10th will have 3. If that happens, the population remains the same. Today, my friends, in Europe, not one single country has 2 children per couple on average, which means Europe has more and more old people and less young people. That means death for the country. It would be a dreadful thing if, here in America, we don't have a 2 per, except among the Latinos, we don't have 2 children on the average. So we're also stagnant now and gradually reducing if nothing happens. Now, so these countries in Europe, they have a choice. Either they subject themselves to live in an inferior standard of living, like the third world, or they fill the gap with immigration. And which countries provide immigrants? Islamic countries. Archbishop Flick from the Czech Republic, he warned, Europe is being Islamized. But think for a moment. Europe is a cradle of a Christian civilization. Where we got our civilization from is Europe. It would be a dreadful thing if one day the Eiffel Tower would be the tallest minaret in Europe. Or the cathedrals of Westminster, Notre Dame, Cologne would echo the verses of the Quran instead of the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. I was in England some years ago attending speaking at a Catholic conference, and I heard this story that a debate between, or an argument between Islamic mullah from the local mosque and a priest of the Church of England. And the mullah said to the priest, do you know, by the end of this century, 21st century, every single cathedral of England will be our mosques. Do you know why? Because we have children and you don't. If you are born in the UK, you are English. You can speak Arabic, but you are English. Think for a moment. That is a cradle of Christian civilization. They promised that a way to avoid abortion is to contracept. Okay. At the end of the day, the population is gradually going through a population winter. I worked in France for a while in a Catholic school, and I learned this. I heard this slogan of the French Muslims. Anybody here speaks French? Ah, c'est très bien, monsieur. C'est fantastique. Je ne savais pas. Nous pourrons parler un peu plus tard, c'est ça, bien sûr. Bon, shall we continue in English or what? Okay, well. And the slogan was that par le ventre de nos femmes, nous allons conquérir l'Europe. By the wombs of our women, we shall conquer Europe. Now, this is a reality that is now. But it's not just a political thing. It is also a Catholic reality. Because the mentality came into the Catholic Church as well. So it became the most common thing in the world for people to use contraception and sterilization among Catholics. Countries like Brazil, where I was born, the largest Catholic country in the world, between quotes, it is a common thing for most women after the second baby to be sterilized. It's a natural thing. It's like pulling your wisdom teeth. That is a reality, the result of contraception. There are, of course, some exceptions among the families. I have been blessed with a bit more than 2 children. I have blessed with 8 children. So, no, wait, sorry. That should go to the mother, because she did all the work. My contribution was minimal, okay? She did all the work. Anyway, I just want a little story to put in the picture. I lived in Australia for a while, and there was, we used to go to the Latin Mass in a church, and I had bought a minibus to carry all the crowd to the Mass. And we had only 7 kids in those days. Fancy that, only 7. Huh? And then we went, as we arrived at the church, the door of the minibus opened and came out 1 kid, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There was a gentleman standing by the door, and he said to me, Mr. De Souza, sir, are they all of your children? Or are they an outing of a primary school? Okay? I said, yes, they are all mine. And my wife, too, as a matter of fact. You see, it's a kind of a teamwork, that I couldn't do by myself. I'm not that good, And then he knew I was making fun of him. Then he got furious. Oh, this is ridiculous. In this day and age, with problems with employment and the Eucharisty and this and that, how can you do such a thing? See, how we did it was not too difficult, It's I'm trying to make it a light matter, but the fact remains that it is in the church. And from the Holy See, from the dioceses, nothing comes out. As a result, we are digging our own tomb with contraception. But the problem is that not always contraception works. So what do we do to solve the problem? Abortion. That's the second step in the encyclical letter Evangelium Vitae. Abortion. Only 2 or 3% of abortions are performed for health reasons, theoretically, or for whatever. Most of them are just free choice of people. That's it. When you think for a moment that you are killing little babies, there is an argument that it should be allowed abortion only in cases of rape and in cases of health of the mother. Say, I was in Australia taking part in a debate, and people say, no, this must understand that. I say, okay, very good. Let's have abortion then only in cases of rape. It means that about less than 1%. So all the other cases should be seen as murder. Don't you agree with that? But they didn't. They wanted to use the excuse of a minority case to justify the majority of abortions. And then I said, well, what about the case of there was a danger for the death of the mother? That's not a reasonable thing. Okay. I'll tell you another parenthesis. I knew a lady who had been married for about 10 years without having any children. And she was very down the dumps with this. She wanted to have a baby of her own. Until one day, one doctor told her, look, ma'am, if you do that and that treatment, a new one that came out now, you can conceive. I said, yes, please, let's do that. She did the treatment and she conceived. And she was over the moon, as happy as a lark. And telling the friends when the baby has little kicks and this and that. But unfortunately, when the day of the birth came, it was a problem. Her body could not take that pregnancy and that labor. And so they rushed her to hospital. And I simplified the details just to say that they had a Caesar section, and she lost lots of blood, and et cetera, et cetera. And the doctor told her, ma'am, if you had been here half an hour before, you'll be dead with your baby. So please, stop this treatment. It's not for you. You should not. I said, okay, very well. We stopped the treatment. 3 years later, for some reason, she's pregnant again. The doctor told her, madam, I told you last time that, I said, oh, well, but I'm pregnant. Well, I suggest that you terminate this pregnancy. That's a nice way of calling abortion. Huh? You terminate this pregnancy because the risk is so high that you are going to die. And she couldn't come to grips with the idea of killing her own child. And the doctor said, ma'am, I don't want you to kill anybody, but don't understand. You have no choice. You will die, most likely, 99.9% you will die. And she was not a very educated woman at all. And she said, well, doctor, try to save both. Very well. Cutting a long story short, the day of the birth came, and it was worse than the previous one. She had her womb stayed open with the Caesar section longer than it should, and infections took place, and she lost blood. The baby was put in an incubator to save his life, a whole 9 yards, but she did not die. And she did not understand the philosophical concept, the moral concept, but she knew that the ends do not justify the means. For you to save the life of an innocent person, you cannot take the life of another innocent person. Well, that's not the only case that I know. You take, for example, that lady in Italy, Santa Gemma, no, not Gemma Galgani, no. Gemma Mola, sì. And she was expecting her third or fourth baby, and she had a tumor in her uterus. The doctor told her that they could operate the tumor, but she might lose the baby. It was not abortion. They wanted to have an operation to remove the tumor. And she said no. The baby was born, and about 3 or 4 weeks later, she died. Today, she is the patroness of the pro-life movement. And the curious thing about this is that she would not agree to take the life of an, even if it was not intended for her, the life of the baby was so sacred. Because she knew that we all are going to die anyway one day. Sooner or later, we are going to go. Now, the funny thing about this is that there's only one case in the whole history of the Roman Catholic Church when a person was canonized, in this case, Santa Mola, and her husband was there in Rome. Look at that and say, my girl is being canonized. Imagine you go home, and there is a picture of his wife, and he says his prayers and novena to his wife. This is crazy stuff. The Roman Catholics are not nuts. But there is another example of a girl, a more complicated case, about 16 years old, who was engaged to a very, very good young man. I don't give names. Very good young man. Very decent, very hard-working, chaste. And then soon at some stage, she appears pregnant. And the fiancé was not the father. Now, can you imagine if it was your daughter or your sister? What do you do now? And she would never say to anybody who the father was. You know this lady here, our Blessed Mother. She knew very well the law of Moses. Adultery was punishable by stoning. And she could not see the future. But she believed in the word of the angel. And she said, yes. She took the risk of being stoned. She believed in the word of the angel. And because of that beautiful yes, we are here. About that lady who had the two Caesar sections, and the baby was put in the incubator, and I forgot to mention that. The baby survived. Grew up, is a man, and now he's here talking to you. I think that few people can say that their mother was a heroine. My mother was. We move on to the third stage, which is euthanasia. Euthanasia is an interesting thing that in abortion, the parents kill the children. In euthanasia is a payback. The children kill the parents. I remember in New Zealand I was attending a talk by a member of parliament who was a conservative man, and he gave examples of what happens in Holland. When in Holland, if the doctor decides that it's not worth keeping you alive, he will sign a paper and they will give you an injection and you die. So lots of old people from Holland go to doctors in France, in Belgium, in Luxembourg. Just in case, you never know. Now, why? Because these people no longer pay taxes, occupy beds that could be used by somebody younger and healthier. This is what Pope John Paul calls the culture of death. All three stages speak only of death. He died before the great movement to promote homosexual so-called marriage came out. Now we have this fourth stage of the destruction of the family. Something that I have difficulty in grasping the meaning. What goes to the mind of the people who support two men or two women to be married. This is so anti-natural. It's not just anti-Catholic, anti-Christian. It's anti-natural. It's a human nature. That's where we are. God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. You know that. It's insane. And then the number of people who commit suicide after a while, and it's just pathetic. But the family is being destroyed. Then we have that's the end of I don't think there is anything worse than that as you go down to hell, is the so-called transgenders. Actually, some people say that there are people who identify themselves as being of the other sex. I can understand that, because it did happen to me. For a period in my life, I, as a male, felt locked up in a female body. I couldn't think. Everything was dark. But it came to an end when I was born. What did you think I was talking about? If you could just see your eyes as I see from here, oh, great stuff. It is impossible. Impossible. Every single cell in my body, in the hair, in the skin, any organ, says that I am male. You cannot change that. Unless there is a way to change the whole body, it will not be human anymore. But still, That is what it summarizes the outcry of Satan in hell. I will not serve. Non serviam. I will not serve. He'll be sent to hell, but he will not change his mind. And today we have so many people that follow this concept given by Satan. And here is another thing. The growth of Satanism today is incredibly wide. In Oklahoma, we have a big statue of Baphomet. It's a devil with a face of a goat and a bisexual with a boy and a girl beside it. Don't you see how it is? Another. In my life, I have seen lots of stories, but I'll tell you this one here. I was in Johannesburg, South Africa. I went to Mass. And at the communion time, we queued up, and there was a young lady ahead of me. And she placed her hand forward. But instead of taking the host from the left hand and take to her mouth, she just put the hands together like this and went to the pew. But the minister of the Eucharist was an Indian chap from India. And these guys are fantastic businessmen. Their eyes are just lose nothing. They said, excuse me, will you please, ma'am, consume the host now? I love that. He has a falsitude, no fear. And she said, well, I was going to consume it in the pew. He said, no, and please, consume it now. Okay, she did it. And I wondered, why did she do that? Did she want to steal the host? If she did, why? I had to find out. Curiosity killed the cat. And so, when the Mass was over, I waited for her to come to the side door of the cathedral, but she was sitting there listening to a concert of organ. And I had to go, because I had a meeting with some friends of mine in a restaurant called La Bella Italia. You folks, you have no idea what a pizza is like. Just to remember that mozzarella with the one side with anchovies, side with pepperoni, and a sprinkle of Parmesan cheese. Just to give an idea how good it was. The kind of a pizza that Mother Eve made for Adam in paradise. Okay, that's a real thing. And the wine. The wine was called Nederburg Stein 1980. Nederburg Stein. It was made in Southwest Africa. And this wine was so delicious, but so incredibly good, that when Jesus changed the water into wine in Cana, he made Nederburg Stein 1980. So it was, and I had to go. So I decided to approach the girl and ask her. I use that phrase that every single man knows. Hello, haven't we met before? You know? And she said, could be. I said, well, was that in the United States? We were in South Africa. And he said, yes, could be. In California? Yes, California. Was that in a private Mass? She said, yes, could be, but she was cautious. I said, your name is Eve, right? Yes, it is. And then she flared up and walked out with me to the door of the cathedral to continue the conversation. Now, what these questions are, it has a particular meaning. When I said California, I was referring to Los Angeles, which is the place where the Church of Satan in America was founded by a Hungarian American called Anton Zandor LaVey, who was a high priest of Satan in this country. Now he's dead, he went to his eternal reward, and his daughter is now the high priestess. And now they live in New York, of course, California, New York, is it? And they is also a not-for-profit corporation. You can give donations and get your receipt. Then I said, there wasn't a private Mass. I was implying the Black Mass, the Satanic Mass. He said, yes, but cautious. Your name is Eve. Yes, it is. Because I had done studies on this. And in satanic worship, at every Black Mass, every female is nicknamed Eve. Because Eve was the first woman who had that spiritual intercourse with Satan. And today we inherit his DNA called original sin. She thought I was one of them, God forbid. And I said, I saw you picking up the hosts. I said, yes, I come here every day for Mass in the cathedral, and I pick up the hosts. I collect them. Just like this, very naturally. A normal young lady, and she didn't have a pointed hat, black with a broom, nothing like this. And I said, oh, really, what do you do with them? Oh, well, I keep them in a drawer in my home. And once every 2 weeks, one of them comes to pick them up. And I said, do you know where they go to? Where the Mass? So, no, I have not been to the Mass, but I was mentally told to do this. Mentally told? What kind of mind control is this? Is this girl possessed? And I realized that I was afraid. I was afraid. I said, I better leave. And she carried on chatting normally. And she even gave me her telephone number. I could have a date in hell. No, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll do without that. And later on, I found out from Zenit News that there is a priest in Rome, Father Giovanni Bonaiuto, who has a ministry aimed at rescuing young people from slavery to the Satanists. This is in Rome. And he said in this interview that a host consecrated in the St. Peter's Basilica can be fetched up to 500 euros in the black market of... Well, I never heard of this black market of hosts. That is the end of the culture of death. It's the death of the soul. I saw a very interesting report on the homosexual network, LGBTQB, or whatever else, that they have their wedding ceremonies also in satanic worship. Okay. Let's take my notice of my time. Now that I have depressed you good and proper, I have to suggest something good, otherwise you're going to stone me to death here. Huh? Pope Pius XI initiated a movement that unfortunately died out shortly before the Council of Vatican II. It was called Catholic Action. Catholic Action was composed of 3 segments. 1, prayer. 2, study. 3, action. And that is what this meeting proposes to you. 1, prayer. Why prayer? Because humanly speaking, my friends, we are doomed. We are doomed. Forget it. There's no way we can recover Christian civilization. It's impossible. We are doomed. We're going to be slaves. That's it. But with prayer, Jesus said, without me, you can do nothing. And St. Paul completes and says, I can do everything in him that strengthens me. So, devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. According to Pope Pius IX, it's the devotion that will save the world. We see Jesus our Lord, the Sacred Heart, as the King of the universe. We live here in a republic, but we are all royalists. We have a king in heaven. And so the knowledge and the understanding of the Sacred Heart of Jesus is fundamental for us to change our hearts like his. This is fundamental. If we don't have a devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, we say goodbye. A natural consequence of this devotion is devotion of Blessed Mother with the Rosary. What we said today here, the Patriotic Rosary, is a brilliant idea. 50 states, 50 Hail Marys. Brilliant. And I never thought of this. This is great stuff. Something we should do. and pray specifically, not just as Bishop Cordileone suggested to pray and fast for the conversion of Pelosi. I pray and fast for her crushing. Yes. The woman is evil. So is the president. They are evil people. They are rats, vermin. Pray the rosary for the salvation of the world and for this country. Because there is one country in the world which is, this here is America, that has any chance at all to survive and overcome the revolution. Then we have Saint Michael the Archangel. We prayed his prayer here. Saint Michael the Archangel, Pope Leo XIII, had a dream at some stage when he saw the church and Rome be invaded by devils. And he was in a fright, and he wrote that prayer, which we should pray every single day, not just once, but several times a day, to rediscover the angelic dimension of reality. We are here, lots of people, lots of angels too. We forget this. We live in their presence. We have angels here with us. Then you come the fourth one, I suggest, adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. It is unthinkable that last year a Pew survey revealed that 70% of church-going Catholics no longer believe in the real presence. %? If it was 1%, it would be bad enough. But 70%, which means widespread apostasy. And what is the clergy doing? What are the bishops doing? They're going to write a document about this sometime next year. Please. So for us to begin in our private lives to have adoration. You can read, you can pray the rose, you can do whatever you like in silence. If you have nothing to say, sometimes I do this. I sit there, I look at my God, and he looks at me. That's it. So that we can share with him, share his, so to speak, suffering in the church today. So Sacred Heart of Jesus, Rosary, St. Michael the Archangel, and adoration. We can, of course, there are many more others. Of course, we are free to do it. We can, St. Augustine said, you love God and do as you please. That's okay. But this we can rediscover the importance of the prayer. Then you have study. America is the only country in the world where you find a variety of apologists, lay apologists. It's here, nowhere else. We have some of them will be speaking here. Doug Barry, Jesse Romero, Father Altman. Oh, sorry, he's a priest, it's different. But among the laity, we do that. Michael Voris, of course, we've done a fantastic job with church militants. So no other country has this. It's only here. We are being kind of spoiled. If you go to Canada, it's a desert of snow, but a desert. In Latin America, there's hardly any. But here in the States, there is the number of apostolates that promotes books and CDs and flyers and videotapes is simply overwhelming. We should make use of that. And out there we have the vendors, we have items like this, CDs for sale, books for sale, etc., etc. And actually, in this sense, I must tell you something. Do you know what this book is? This is a book written by King Henry VIII, the guy who founded the Church of England. When he was Catholic, he wrote this book in defense of the 7 sacraments. And St. Thomas More helped him write the book. the Pope gave him a title, Defender of the Faith. But when he left the church, the book disappeared in history. Have you anybody ever heard of this book being published? No. Oh, very good. Vive la France, that's it. And then, ou le Canada français, je ne sais pas. Bon. And then I found this book in Australia, and I published it. Because he defends the seven sacraments. He defends the real presence in the Eucharist in a masterly way. It's unique to see the heretic who founded the Church of England, no, the schismatic, who founded the Church of England, defending Roman Catholicism, the papacy, etc., etc. And I had the book dedicated to Her Majesty Elizabeth II. Because I'm also Australian citizen. God save the Queen and bring her to the church. So the idea, and I had this book promoted there. I have it here. And I have it has been published in German and in Poland in due course. So gradually, to remind the clergy and the Protestants, the Catholic clergy and the Protestants, of the seven sacraments of our Lord. Coming from a man who, St. Thomas More, had a great hand in this. Do you know the movie A Man for All Seasons? Who has not seen this movie, A Man for All Seasons? Who has not? You should all go to confession, you know. Because it's a brilliant, brilliant movie showing the man who resisted as we are resisting to the end and did not mind to give his life. Today he's in the glory of the saints. Study. We have to study more. Why so many Catholics don't know how to answer Protestants and liberal Catholics? Because we don't know the teaching of the church. That's it. So we must study. Watch less television and less Facebook. Actually, there's a priest friend of mine in Australia who said in a day where people should cut their times on TV, and the lady said, Father, how many hours should we dedicate to study or TV? I said, very simple. Spend the whole week and count the hours that you watch TV or the computer. Cut this hour in half. Give half to the study and half to the TV. So, reasonable. You could hear a pin drop. Because we got so used to not studying. We prefer to watch news and videos, etc., etc. Prayer, study, and then action. Many good Catholics try to get involved in action without studying and without praying. You fail. The bottom line, the guarantee for divine grace to be with us is a life of prayer. And intellectually, we need the study. We need it. Apologetics, learn how to defend every single aspect of Catholic doctrine. It may be overwhelming for you to take the whole thing. No, begin. We begin to study it. And then we have action. Can be political action. Can be pressure action. There are Catholics who join the school boards in different places to be a pain in the neck for those people there. You see? But because we don't join these things, we stay home. Not a good idea. Those who become to promote political action and to ask questions to the bishops. For example, Donald Trump, in spite of all his defects, and there are many, he was the only president who participated, who stood present in the March for Life. Now, how many Catholic bishops stood up and said, thank you, Mr. President, for your contribution, for your example. We may disagree with you about the immigration or whatever else, but not one. It is disgusting. So we must stand up. There is one thing that most Catholics don't know. It's called canon law. Canon law is for the Catholic Church what the Constitution is for the country. And in canon law, there is a canon 212 when the Holy Father, John Paul II, gave to very clearly in the canon that you should be every Catholic, every faithful Catholic would be allowed to use his right of speaking up in the church and sharing his views with other people. What I'm doing here now, I'm using canon law. Especially when we have scandals coming from the most sacred of places, the Holy See. Something that really hurts my heart to see. I've been to Rome several times and see the beauty of St. Peter's, to see the Swiss Guard, the grandeur of the Holy Mother Church, and to see what's happening now. Especially to see the communist regime of China giving $2 billion a year to the Vatican for its silence. I could go on and say more, but we'll let it go. So let me close with a speech by Pope Benedict XVI in Castel Gandolfo. He was commenting on the expression of Jesus when he said, I came here not to bring peace, but division, the sword. And he said, Christ's word means that the peace he came to bring to us is not synonymous with the mere absence of conflict. This is in the Catholic Catechism, quoting on the fathers of the church, St. Augustine. The mere absence of a conflict is not peace. You can have this in an abortion clinic. Everything is very quiet. Kill one baby after another, no big deals. Or in a communist prison in China, everything is quiet. Or in a cemetery, everything is quiet, and there's no conflict. But then he says, on the contrary, Jesus' peace is the result of a constant battle against evil. That's the concept of peace. A constant battle against evil. The fight that Jesus is determined to support is not against human beings or human powers, but against Satan, the enemy of God and man. Anyone who desires to resist this enemy must remain faithful to God and to good, and must necessarily face misunderstandings. We're talking about here the concept of putting to practice our sacrament of confirmation, when we became soldiers of Christ. How many times have we thought about this? We are confirmed, so we are soldiers of. When we are baptized, we became citizens of God's kingdom. But when we are confirmed, we join the armed forces. We place the breastplate of justice, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, the shield of faith. What we are doing here, my friends, is to train ourselves to do battle for the peace of Christ in the kingdom of Christ. Just to finish with the French, Saint Joan of Arc was a patron saint, one of the patron saints of France. And when she was a little girl of 16, dressed in a suit of armor, going to lead the men into battle, something very unheard of, especially in those days. And they asked her, why do you don't have any chance, why do you try to do this? And she said, les soldats combattront, mais Dieu donnera la victoire. Soldiers will fight, but it is God who gives the victory. And that is what our motto, one of our mottos could be. God is not guaranteeing that we're going to win. Not at all. If we die in the process, we go to heaven. That's it. But we are called to fight. Not to win, to fight. Our Lord, in His good providence, will give us the victory. Let me finish with a little story of a little girl attending a class of catechism, and the priest was saying to them that God can do everything. God is omnipotent. And then all the kids were very happy. I said, well, really? Yeah. Can do anything? Anything, you name it, kiddo. And one kid said, could he change the water of our swimming pool into Coca-Cola? And the priest said, well, I don't think it is in the mind of the Lord to do this right now. Well, if he changed the water into wine, why not Coke? So it's the same thing. Oh, that's great, great. The kids are happy. Somebody else said, what about changing our books into chocolates so we could eat them and learn everything? Again, a difficult theological problem. And the priest said, well, I don't think the Lord is planning to do this now. But look, if he multiplied bread and fish, why not chocolates? Why not? Until one little girl in the front row was very sad. He said, what happened, Mary? No, I don't believe this. So, what? I don't believe God can do everything. There's one thing that God cannot do. I have been praying for this all the time, such a long time, and he never did it. Not that he wants to do it, but he cannot do it. He has not the power to do it. And then, but what is it? Tell us. No, don't worry. All the kids came around her and said, please tell us what it is you believe that God cannot do, and I'll guarantee he can do it. No, you cannot guarantee anything. No, I said. And then, of course, the kids were very curious, as you are right now, to find out what it is. And she said this, Father, God cannot please everybody. He will not please everybody. This for us is a lesson that with the help of our Blessed Mother in heaven, our Queen, we will arm ourselves with the weapons of prayer, of study, to get into action, to defend this country as the last bastion of Christian civilization. Thank you very much. God bless you.